Good morning, Kymber. You're still muted there. There you go. I'm not hearing you.
Me? Okay.
Oh, now I am.
Okay. I'm like, uh-oh.
No, we're good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm wonderful. This is like the sunniest time of day.
I was just going to say, you got some great sunshine coming in
I
there.
mean, I'm actually going to turn myself around because it's a little too much sunshine. Who can have too much sunshine?
How's the weather down? You're in DC, correct?
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Nice. Send it this way, will you?
Yeah. It's not in New Hampshire, you guys. I feel like
No, it's not bad. No, it looks like a nice morning. It's just starting to feel like fall. It's awesome. My favorite time of year.
70-degree days, which is kind of
Ooh.
wild.
Gotta like that. Yeah, we got snow up on Mount Washington already, so getting ready for the winter. Oh, so we'll just love the office, by the way. Some nice decor going on there. Now, are you in KW office or you're
Yeah, I'm in one of our DC locations. We have a couple locations in DC, so I'm in what we call Tinleytown. So
okay.
yeah, in the city.
Awesome. So people start rolling in here as
You
we
might
go.
know. Yeah, this is here too.
Oh, no worries. So you're a regional director for KW, correct?
I am from Maryland, DC. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, because you guys are in the New England region.
Yeah, New England region. Yeah, New Hampshire. Wow, that's got to keep you busy. Never mind all the other stuff you got going on.
Yeah, it's a little busy.
Man, so are you also involved with Her Best Life?
I am. Yep, I'm one of the founders of Her Best
That's what I
Life.
thought. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. That's such a great group.
They're an amazing group.
Yeah, it really is.
We have our board meeting right after this. So
do you?
we do.
So that's just all the more reason to say thank you for squeezing us in.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to do it.
I appreciate it. So we get people rolling in here. We'll give them another minute or so. Definitely one thing I'd like to touch on today for sure is that, you've done a lot of work in the working in revitalization of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I would love to know more about what drives you to do that and the passion behind that, because that's I'm guessing there's a lot of passion behind that.
There is for sure. For
Okay.
sure.
Awesome. So
fun.
I'll throw that out there. Otherwise, we'll just have a conversation and hopefully
Yeah,
we'll get some people to chime in and ask some questions and sure we should have a pretty good crowd. We got about 20 on already and we're just 8:31, so that's a good thing.
That's awesome.
And Tassie, thank you for joining us as well.
No problem. You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. So she's I tell you, having an assistant is huge. I just hired a VA, and it's been just little things. I didn't realize how much time I was spending on stuff that didn't really. It wasn't the highest and best use of my time. Let's put it that way. So it's been. I was feeling a bit overwhelmed, and this has definitely been a good thing. So having somebody like Tassie who communicates the way you do, young lady, you're on top of it.
He is on top of it.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Somebody
absolutely.
else's superpower. So
Yep. All right. It was 8:32. Let's get going. I don't want to punish the prompt as people continue to roll in. So Kymber, can you give us just a quick 10,000-foot view of who you are and how you got to where you are?
yeah. Well, thanks, Tony, for having me. I love the consistency and the commitment that you guys in the office have had to just take this time in the mornings to kind of get your heads right, get your mindset right, and pour into one another. So I love it. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
I'm Kymber Lovett-Menkiti. I'm actually here in Washington, DC. So I started, actually, my background is in social work, right? So I am trained and worked as a social worker for a number of years and got into real estate in 2007. So my partner in 2004, Bo, was an agent. We were he started with Coldwell Banker in 2004, 2006, and opened the first KW in Washington, DC in 2006 as literally an agent, and had been an agent for 2 years, jumped in from Coldwell Banker and launched the first KW. We were 26 and 20, 27, 29. Like, I don't know what
Wow.
he was thinking. I say that. I said that very recently. I was like, what were you really thinking? You're like, yeah, we should expand into DC with these like kids who in some ways, I think there's a beauty because you just don't know, what do we call about like unconscious incompetence? Like you don't know what you
Yep.
don't know. So you dive in. And it was certainly probably with you guys too in New Hampshire around the time, Keller who, like people thought like, who were these kids starting in, Northeast? We picked a part of town that we were living in. And that really, it was like the home of all the secret agents. So a lot of agents live there because it's where they could afford, but they all wanted to have their offices sort of uptown, Georgetown, like Northwest, like parts of the city that were more affluent. And
Gotcha.
so everyone like very secretly would then come and be like, we live around the corner from you. And we were like, really? Like, why don't you sell real estate here? So we just kind of put our heads down and we started the brokerage in Northeast DC in this little neighborhood called Brookland. We lived there and we were building our real estate team there. So when I started in 2007 as dual career, I had left the education and social work space and was for the first year balancing, right, working and then selling real estate on the evenings and weekends. And so you can imagine what happened right in 2007. We actually also, at the same time, we're kind of starting a development company. We bought a 21 unit condo building and we were doing our very first condo project. So all of these like exciting things were happening. And then literally we sold half the building and then the market kind of bottomed out and we were left with half of a building that was completely unsold. You had a market that was slowing down and a brokerage that was actually growing pretty rapidly during that time, but a market that was sort of completely bottoming out. Right. So we kept half the building and we rented it and we just kind of put our heads down and we built a very hyper local business. For about 3 or 4 years, we just focused on the DC market center and then started to expand. So I really focused very heavily for the first decade on building out the sales business, and Bo really focused on building out sort of our brokerage platform. And we were both kind of involved in the development work that we were doing. And so that today, you look up and 18, 19 years later, and we have 6 market centers across 10 locations in the DMV that stretches all the way down about an hour and a half south of Washington into Fredericksburg, Stafford, Fairfax are our Virginia locations. And then we have a couple of physical locations in DC, one market center and very hyper local focus. So we took that early commitment to community and hyper local. And in the city, even though it's a small footprint of a city, it can take an hour to cross, 5 miles. And so agents really wanted, if you were in Capitol Hill, you really wanted Capitol Hill. Where I am, it can take me an hour to get across town to Capitol Hill today. So we've got another location, what we call Upper Northwest, sort of on the other end of the city. And then our central hub of where our team still operates out of the Northeast community neighborhood where we started. So that's sort of the brokerage footprint. And then we just expanded into Baltimore. So we've got 1,000 agents inside of our Keller Williams Capital Properties footprint. And so, so I had the team. I also have had at that time in that team where we were building, had 3 amazing little boys in about a 5-year span. So being a hyper local agent for me was really critical because I could go to the playground on Saturday morning with my boys and also talk to families about real estate. So it was a cool.
Let me get Paul.
Hey,
Hey, Paul, can you mute for me, please?
I always like to have the zap. Yeah. Hi, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. So anyway, so that sort of fast forward. And then 5 years ago, I stepped into the regional role. So in Maryland, DC, similar to your New England region, Maryland, DC is our local region. And so I stepped in as the regional director and got leverage in our sales business and continues to operate in the DMV, but also now have an opportunity to help build and grow market centers and leaders across the KW Maryland, DC region.
Wow. So that's
quite
the story. I all while raising 3 kids. How old are the boys now?
Well, and then we added a 4th one. So we have 4 boys who are 15, 13, 11, and almost 5.
Wow.
So yeah, they're a fun crew.
Oh, I'll bet. Unbelievable. So in 2007, when you said that, the first thing I thought of was that's great timing. Obviously, I had no idea, but that's great timing.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time during that 08, 09, 2010 when things were really rough that you said, why are we doing this?
Yeah, the gift of coming in is not knowing, like Bo had come in, so he knew the world of like, everyone, people like waiting in their cars, you took a listing and you got 50 offers, like sort of this, like the frenzy that was 2005 and 2006 as the market was sort of racing up. But because I came in 2007, the music had already started to stop, is how I describe it. So a
Okay.
lot of agents who had come in a few years before me, it's actually very similar to now, right? Like they were like, wait, like they didn't realize that the phone stopped ringing until it was too late. And then because you were having to like start a behavior that either you did before or you hadn't had to do in the time that you'd been in the industry, it was slower. So for me, it was like, it's like coming on the track and everybody's already running. And so I just came in and I was doing the activities. I didn't know any different. And so our business was like growing, like it was like, right, 30 units, 60 units, 100 units, 100 million. Like it was just like boom, 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 exponentially growing. And I think a big part of a gift of that was, which I'm seeing it now with our agents, right? They're like, well, wait, last year, 2 years ago, I didn't have to work this hard and the business just came. People were just like waiting for me to sell their houses. And now I'm working 3 times as hard and I'm selling less. And so that, like the psychological part of that, of like, this isn't what it was supposed to be. Like I didn't think this is what I signed up for. And so the gift of that period was that, yeah, I didn't know any different. So I was calling, I was reaching out, we were doing seminars, like we were doing things because it was still like fun and new and exciting. Um, and it was hard, but I didn't really know that it was hard. And the background in social work really helped because you're sitting down at
Mhm.
tables helping people figure out whether they should be short selling, whether like it was a hard time. Um, and that background I think really helped because you were really helping advise people around very difficult, financial and personal decisions in their lives.
Love that. Um, so if you fast forward to today, which I mean, there are some similarities. There's a lot of things that are very, very different. But what would you, or what are you advising your new agents getting into the business? So I'm the productivity coach here, so I'm all ears on this one. I'm always looking for advice. How are you prepping new agents for this market and for this business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good time because you don't know what was. I think it's actually a much harder time to be, have been in the business 5, 10 years because you were lulled into complacency. I say that lovingly, right? In that
Mm,
2020 through 2022 period where we all thought we were just so amazing, and we are, right? But having an extra 2 million sales nationwide was helped all of us, right? Because there was a
sure.
lot of pie for everybody to eat, and there's still a lot of pie, but like in almost all the markets, there's less of it. And so I think as a new agent, like you come in and you're doing the things like, and you have all the tools and technology and like you get to, like, it's what you're saying at the beginning, the leverage of even just the technology leverage. And so if you're coming in and plugging in a database and sitting in an open, like you are just, you don't, this market doesn't feel different to you because it's new, right? So the way you talk about compensation, the way you have to learn to talk about your fee, the way you have to give a presentation is just, it is what it is. You don't know it any other way. You're not having to unlearn something or feel like there's change. And so I think for our new agents, like their gift is like, they're just like, okay, that's how you do it. Like, let's do it. And getting into the flow. And we're seeing like our agents who have been in the business 12 to 24 months. Like I look up sometimes and I'm like, man, like they remind me that like the mindset of this is hard. They're like, what are you talking about? This is great. I'm talking to my database. I'm engaging them. I'm having events. I'm talking about on social media, like they're just grabbing market share.
Wow, interesting. So the reverse side of that question would be, and as you said it, I agree with you. You get agents that got lulled into complacency because I won't say it wasn't that hard, but it was a very, and New Hampshire's been a very seller based, very quick paced market for many, many years. And most of the agents in our office, a good portion of them, have never seen anything different. So now that we got some changes, what would your advice be to someone who's been in the business 5, 10 years or more?
Yeah. I mean, one is like you have to get committed into the basics, right? Which we talk a lot about, right?
Mm,
But this idea of like, what's the core of your business? Like, what's the core? What's the database? What's the thing that like you should be leaning into that's going to know you, like you trust you the most? So like you have to, even our sales team still like it is. I mean, Tassie and I talk about this regularly. What's the database? How are we nurturing it? What are we doing? How are we like all those things? So that's like that's obvious, right? That you got to have that piece of it.
Yep.
And I think you have to recognize that if you've been in it 5, 10, 15, you're like, it's not just a year, you're building out the business. And so if there's a blip, if there's a hard year, if it's not what you expected it to be, one, like you got to actually continue to be committed to the activity that we're supposed to be like, that has driven your business in the past, and often doing more of it. Like this idea that like, well, I did this was my lead gen funnel. I did it for 2 hours a day and it got this result. And so a lot of times I think people don't double down on what's required. So they're like, well, I did the same thing and I'm not getting the result. And
Gotcha.
it's like, you have to actually then go back and adjust so that you're making sure, like, if it means you got to do more time, you have to double down, you have to do the activity, like, and I think that's where a lot of us, I've seen a lot of our top producers are really struggling with that. Like, I didn't have to take buyers and now I do. Or I've always done it this way. I've always given my presentation this way. I've always talked about things this way. And now, like, it's a lot of change in a time when there's also compressed market activity. And so it is like, you got to be a student of the market, of your industry, of like everybody's leveling up. And that is requiring different behaviors from all of us.
So what I see, and I'd love to get your take on this, is you get somebody who's been doing it for quite a few years, and I've always done this, it's always worked. And instead of doubling down, as you said, and I've heard Gary say that, you need to double down on what you're doing. Instead, it's, what about this shiny object? I'm going to try this instead. I'm going to try that instead. Is that something you see commonly in experienced agents where they
Oh,
just,
well, it's like, what is, Gary often says like, right, variety is the spice of life. Like, we should be doing something different. In our business, actually, it's not, right? Like, it's the worst thing that you can do. If you, like, I just taught business planning clinic last week for a bunch of agents here. And when we said, like, the answer's 80% of your lead sources are coming from 2, maybe 3 places.
Yeah.
And so really being committed, right? Gary tells us, build a moat around that part of your business. Not that
Yeah.
you can't innovate around some piece. Like, you get to be creative. You can find, like, you can add an additional lead source, but you don't give up what the bread and butter of your business is, the lead sources that have really fed and nurtured it. And I think we all have to be cautious today because there's lots of shiny objects that usually come with a subscription service. And so they're like, just sign up for this. And so really holding your ROI, holding your money accountable, because a lot of us, people you watch, there's big number. We just had Kim Posick was just here, and
he's awesome.
he's
Love
awesome.
Ken.
Yeah, he was just in the region this week, and he talked a lot about, right, like Ken left KW and went to a competitor, right, in a rev share model, and really said he literally watched like his business just like the business, right? Like what he actually did for this shiny object of like, use your influence and here, you're going to grow this thing and money's just going to fall out of the sky. And he was like, he looked up and he was like, wait, this thing that actually is what I'm passionate about, which feeds my family, has changed my life, like, which is my core real estate business, actually is where I need to focus. And 6 months later, right, comes back to KW and has now, like, right now has the number 3 team in all of Keller Williams, with a real commitment to going deep where he is. So talk about hyper local. Of course, he's here. He's I think in 15 regions this year. And so everybody there is like, can you expand here? I'll expand. Can I be your expansion partner? And he was like, I only have 0.5% market share in Orlando. And he's gonna do $350 million. So he was like, I'm just gonna go really deep right here. He's like, what would it look like if my team had 2% market share, right? Which seems, when you hear that, but it's this idea of like consistency to the thing that you know how to do. That the shiny object would be, like somebody in Orlando wants to be the Posick team, or like in Florida. Right? He's like, no, I'm just gonna keep going deep right here. And now he's taking that one vertical and using the flywheel. Like, he's launching commercial, he's launching, like, right, he's doing a lot of really cool stuff, but he's just like niching all the way down in his market, which I think is so wise. It was a huge lesson, I think, for a lot of our agents in the room.
I love that. And one thing I love about Ken, we had him on Morning Mindset last year, is that when he moved from Michigan, he had nobody in Florida. He knew nothing. He knew nobody. So he was trying all these different things.
Yeah.
And was not having, it was head against the wall. And then he just one day said, I'm going to do YouTube.
Yeah, someone told him, right? Yeah.
And he was terrible at it.
Years ago with 0 people. He knew nobody in Orlando, him and his wife, like right in the family, and started video 6 years ago. So but the idea, and he talked about, it was 2 years before he really started to see like active. So can you imagine you're doing 1 video a week for 2 years? I mean, talk about like you guys are modeling the consistency, but that's it. Like that's the secret. Like we want the secret to be this like big shiny object, but the secret is like it could be anything. Like, right, like anything will work, nothing doesn't. And so like what's the thing? But it is saying I'm going to be consistent with this thing. And we were big geographic farmers. And so that like that was always what I would teach. Like you have to budget it for a minimum of 12 months. Or like you just
Yeah,
you have to know that and you have to be committed to it. And I think that actually goes for almost anything in any lever we want to pull in our business.
I agree. It's funny you said everything works and nothing doesn't. That's one of the favorite sayings of our OP who started this whole call, Bill Weidecker, who's actually on his way to Austin for some commercial training right now. But that's one of Bill's favorite things. I wanted to make sure I touched on this, and looking and doing some research on you, and I'm familiar with you because I follow your podcast but your focus on your urban revitalization and working there. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it was always like this early commitment to being hyper local, right? Our mission is to transform lives, careers, and communities through real estate. So the sales
Mm,
team was sort of like what we saw as boots on the ground. But one of the biggest mistakes I think I saw agents make even early on was that they would be really excited about a development opportunity, like a house that they could give to one of their developers. And what was the big win on the back end, right? What's a big win when you get a developer client? Maybe you get to double end it. Maybe you get to relist it when it comes back on the market. And so we're walking away with this like really small fee. And then, we literally passed the equity, passed the wealth opportunity to somebody else. And
okay.
so early on, we stabilized our incomes. Both of us came out of nonprofit sector, right? So we were used to nonprofit salaries. And so for the first like 7 years of the business, we just paid ourselves. We just continued to have the business pay us. And that allowed us, as the business was really growing exponentially, to double down on invest on the community that we believed in, that we were already like, right, we were the promoters of, we were driving people to. And so instead of just being these like great real estate agents, we were building a portfolio of real estate assets in that community. And that was also helping to revitalize, to transform. So that started with single family residential. Then it went into multifamily residential, and then it has now gone into commercial. And so that it really started, which took us about a decade to kind of put to realize, hey, we were actually building a model for this deep investment and holistic investment in a community that now has been a blueprint for us to then go to other neighborhoods and take that same lens. We actually have expanded into Worcester, Massachusetts.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
yeah, so we have a whole team actually operating in Worcester today that does development, that does residential. And so this idea that like you actually are like the information. We're often the first to know right, what's happening in an area, what's the economic development levers that your community is engaging and investing in, and we're often people that are promoting a community. And so for us, it was really an opportunity to make the community that we were already a part of and we were living in and working in to be better for our boys, and then also to help people harvest the economic opportunity that they lived in this was a community that people were living in for 30-40 years, and then not being able to see the community continue to improve so that they could recognize the economic impact. So it's been a really cool thing. I think it's allowed us to, it's been our wealth driver, because
Okay.
we've been able to take this high cash business for a lot of us that the residential sales is, but to really build out a portfolio of assets in residential and commercial that has really been what's fueled our wealth building journey. So it's been fun. And then you look up and you've been a big part of helping to transform a community and create a lot of impact and opportunity in the city, which has been something that we're both really passionate about.
Love that. So I'm hearing a consistent theme here, and that is, sorry for the play on words, but consistency. And you can look at your resume and go, wow, this girl just popped in out of an overnight success. And that's not the case. That's not how success works. And so you've been doing this almost 20 years.
Crazy.
You don't look old enough to be doing it 20 years, but so what would you say are some of the things that were the biggest hurdles for you to get past and you struggled with, and what are some of the things that you really leaned into to help you grow? Like maybe one on each side of that coin.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk a lot about this. If you haven't followed the Empire Building podcast
Mhm.
episode on imposter syndrome, like this idea of just sort of like, can I really do this? Am I really like, right, is this really something that I should have the opportunity to be able to do? And so I think being able, for me, having this type of a community, right, having a group of people around me, which is what the Her Best Life community really fostered, was like, hey, this group of people that were saying yes, like even going into the RD role, I was one of the only women in the room, certainly nobody that was, my age in the room. And I was coming at it from, we had the brokerages, but I had been really a mega agent. And so also like just the profile, like nothing about it looked like I should be in that room. And that was the group that was like, absolutely, you can do it. Yes, you should like, yes, like just kept pushing. And so that, for me, that was a big one, right? Like, why not you? And finding the people in your world, in your market center, in your like, right, building out a community of a mastermind community that really is going to say, yes, you can, whether like, what is it that you want, name it, and then like actually start to move to it. So I think that was a big one.
Love that. And I remember that episode, by the way. It was really good. You talked
Yeah.
about it, and Via did one earlier on the upper limit problem,
The upper limit problem.
which
Yeah.
is absolutely true. We start to feel the success, and then we're like, well, I can't be that good, or I can't achieve this, I can't do that, and we dial that thermostat back down.
100%. And you should
And
look at that, right? If you're constantly hitting up against that, it's the same thing. Upper limit is the same thing in your financial world, right? Have you always hit this like ceiling around your wealth building, ceiling around your production? Like that's usually like the self-leadership is the thing that we often go past. We want to lead other people. We want to lead a team. We want to lead in the market center. But are you doing the things that, you need to help lead yourself first? And that's often confronting, hey, what are the things that I need to push through that are actually going to help me get to the next level?
I love that. And that is true. That is so true. We got about, wow, got 5 minutes
I know
left.
you said this when we talked
It was
yesterday. Like we're going to
boom.
look up and it's going to be 10.
It's going to be gone. It goes by. So we have 6 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to make sure that you leave these guys with today? And I'll open it up for some questions in terms of the changes in today's market. And I see Ken's already got his hand up. The changes in today's market, the whole buyer agency thing, which I think if you approach that right, by the way, I think it's a gift.
It is a gift.
I was just talking to an agent I coached last night, and we were talking about it, and he was like, this is so much better for me than it was in the past. It was just, now it's very clear. And anyway, he feels like he got himself a raise as well, which is a good thing. But what would you want to make sure that you share with us in terms of some of the mindset piece that you're really pushing towards with this change and shift in the market?
Yeah. I think this assumption, challenging the assumption that it's not supposed to be hard. Like, right, like the requirement, like the cost of admission to a big life is actually the hard stuff. It's the heartbreak, it's this challenge, it's the change, it's the struggle. And I think when you release the idea that there are not hard seasons, that like it is actually supposed to be hard and it can still be beautiful and it can still be, like you said, like it can actually on the other side of that can create huge opportunity. But I think when we sometimes sit in the idea of like, oh, woe is me, like, why is this happening? Why are they picking on our industry? But I'm one of the good ones. Like you have to kind of like gate yourself. So you get like a minute, right? Like it doesn't mean you don't have the feeling. It doesn't mean you don't have the moment where you're like, this is not what it was supposed to be. But it is actually like, it's a complete shift when you're like, you know what? Like, no, actually, like it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be like big lives actually come, like that is a cost of admission. And I think when you shift that, I think it allows you to say, okay, so now what am I going to do? What am I going to do to actually like be on the other side of this, and harvest the hard for the good?
Ooh, cost of admission. I'm so stealing that.
Yes.
That was great. Ken Tass, you got your hand up. Fire away, please.
Cool. Hey, Kymber, thank you so much for being here. I've listened to you on either the MREA or Think Like a CEO or something like that. So
Yes,
great to
thank
see
you.
you.
Yeah, MREA I did it with Jason a couple months ago. Yeah.
So the question I had is like when you made the decision to come up to Worcester, Massachusetts, there must have been some metrics that you looked at from your DC work and revitalization. And I'm wondering like, are there any numbers that you saw over the course of that decade in DC, like more the areas that you were working in improved lifestyle, improved economics for the local people, retail stores moving into your neighborhoods and things like that, that were like, yes, we did it. Let's go to another city.
Yeah. It's never quite that perfect, right? Like, I think we were seeing it, and part of what you're saying, like, it was actually other people seeing it and sort of being like, hey, like looking at the appreciation that was happening, looking at like some of the areas that were, there was nothing there before, right? There was no retail. It was not neighborhoods that people were even promoting that they lived in, right? So I think that those were sort of some of the things that had started to show up. And then we were starting to build, right? We were actually attracting in. We had our mega agent office space we had acquired. We left it vacant for a year to get the right tenant. We were not just going to stick somebody in there. We asked the community, what were you looking for? What was going to be most successful? We ended up bringing a locally owned hardware store that now 9 years later has stuck and stayed and been really successful. So I think one of the things we're also looking at is like, where are, as communities are stretching and people are driving and going more, like, where are the next locations? I mean, certainly Worcester, Bo grew up in Boston. So Worcester was kind of like, people were starting to stretch. I mean, right. It's one of the second most populated in New England. Like, there were all these metrics that you're starting to look at and you're like, hey, this is actually like, we're trying to go to the place that you can see it. It just needs the value of it needs to be brought to light. And so you're trying to get in from a development perspective before all of that's happening, but you already know it. The community already has intrinsic value. We're not coming in and saying we're building and making the community. We're saying, hey, this community already has a lot of value. It just actually needs to be harvested and promoted and like brought in. And so that's allowed us from a municipality standpoint to go to different neighborhoods and communities and respond to different RFPs and then be able to come in from a public-private partnership on the development side. But because we have that residential knowledge, really have that boots on the ground, like what's happening in an area, how does housing drive that? And how do you actually help people see that when they're trying to identify neighborhoods that they want to buy or invest in, especially as we're thinking about wealth building.
Great.
Love that.
Thank you very much.
We've really leveraged the economic development side of towns and cities to help us drive
Awesome.
Thank
Great
you.
answer.
Thank
We're at 8:59. We have time for one more question, or if there's something else you want to make sure that you share, Kymber, please. You got the floor, but this has been absolutely fantastic.
No, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, I always love staying connected. You can find me, Kymber Lovett-Menkiti. I'll drop in the chat, but I'd love to stay
Please.
connected. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, drop in the chat, and that would be fantastic.
That's my Instagram and
Okay.
books, and then I'll just drop my email. So happy to always stay connected. Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Hey,
Opportunity with you guys.
It is 9 o'clock. I want to keep everybody on task. Go out and make a difference today. Kymber, you've made a difference in our day. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.